Everybody, we must be one. Everybody, we must be one.
Welcome to the Hughes Roundtable.
Everybody.
I'm Nina Hughes.
I'm Michaela Hughes.
I'm Janice Hertzog.
And I'm John Hertzog.
Welcome. Before we get started, we just want to let you know that my husband is absent today. You didn't hear his voice on the introduction, but we want to let you know that we are not pastors. We are not ministers. We have not been to a school of theology. We are everyday people just loving on Jesus. So we want to put that disclaimer out there so that as you're listening, you understand that we're sharing life experiences, things that we have endured, things that we have overcame, and that the reason that we're sharing is so that others are able to overcome as well. So as we go on today, we want to invite you to listen to my friend and coworker that we have here, Janice, and her husband John is visiting as well. He may or may not say anything, but she is going to share her story about breast cancer. So she survived the beast. We want you to visit us on youtube.com. You can find us under the Hughes Roundtable, and you would click on the videos, and that would bring up all of our episodes that we have recorded as we have started this process. And you won't be able to see any videos at this time. It's all audio, but hopefully one day we will be able to share videos with you as well. So now we're going to let Janice take the floor so that she can share her life experience with you.
Well, first of all, John and I are initially from Pennsylvania. We ended up in Ohio about 3.5 years ago. We came down to, his daughter had opened a shop down here, a bakery, and we came down to help her, and then she moved to Florida. So John and I were kind of left here on our own, other than people that we knew from work or whatever. And in February of 2017, I felt a lump in my breast and ended up, really we had no doctors. We had nothing set up that we had, any doctors, nowhere to go, didn't have any idea, but they had built a big brand new medical center over in Pickerington, which is where we initially started our lives here in Ohio in Pickerington, because that's where his daughter was from. And we ended up in moving to Canal through a fire, which was all happening at the same time that I was going through this cancer. So I ended up, I don't know, I guess that's where the Lord led me. I ended up just walking into this medical building and said to the lady at the front desk, I need a doctor. She was very, very nice, and she had taken me over to the board and had shown me all the doctors that were on there, who she recommended. And of course, at first I had to go to a gynecologist to get recommended for a mammogram and everything. So I began the process of trying to figure out what to do next. So, and it was before Christmas that I had found a lump, but I said to John, I'm not going to put anybody through that, including ourselves. So I waited to the beginning of the year and started this process. So she had recommended some doctors, and I called and set up the appointments, and just started from there, figuring out what to do next to try to get through, what we thought could be cancer, but we were at that point weren't sure yet. Mm-hmm. So I'd gone to the doctor, the gynecologist that she recommended, and she wouldn't let me leave that day without having tests done, because she said she did not like what she felt or saw there. So that day, I had probably about a whole half a day's worth of tests, between mammograms and, everything that possibly needed done to make sure what was going on with me and my body. So I went back to work, and a couple of days later or whatever, I was called. Well, that same day, I'd met a breast surgeon and everything. And so at that point, I had all my doctors set up in case we were to get the news that I had cancer. So oddly enough, I had the doctor had called me back, and I had appointments set up for February 14th, Valentine's Day of 2017. Mm-hmm. So that's whenever I was diagnosed, on Valentine's Day. But oddly enough, it was kind of a nice day. I mean, I really feel like I was not scared through the whole thing, And I just, in a sense, forgive me if I get emotional.
Hey,
But
it's an emotional thing.
it is.
Mm-hmm.
But, I kind of felt that God was with me through the whole thing. And I'll tell you why. I had gone through, I was diagnosed, and then you're like devastated to get those words that you have cancer. And then you go back and she says, well, now you have to get tested to see if you have it anywhere else. So, and that's kind of where, my story began whenever I truly felt God was with me through my whole process.
Mm-hmm.
John's sister had come down and she was going to go with us because it was on a Monday and I had tests set up to find out, all kind of tests to find out if I had cancer anywhere else. So she came down and we went to a Wendy's the Sunday before I was going for these tests. And we had debated even what Wendy's we were going to go to. And then John decided, well, let's go to the one in Pickerington closer to home. So that's where we went. And while we were sitting there after we got done eating, John got up to go to the bathroom. And this young boy come up to me and he says to me, God's calling me over here. He said, does somebody over here have a problem or is something going on? And my mouth fell open. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And he said, I have this strong sense that God's sending me over here to pray for somebody. So I was like, well, I said, I was just diagnosed with breast cancer. I said, and I'm going tomorrow for test of my body to see if I have it anywhere else. Well, within seconds, he was with a nice young bunch of young gentlemen, and he's like called his buddies over, and within seconds those boys were over there. They're pulling tables and separating chairs and sitting down and like, can we pray for you? So John comes out of the bathroom and was like, what is going on? When he left, there was me and Kathy. When he came back, there was like me and 6 young kids all around our table, and they were explaining to John what they had felt and what they had heard, and that God was calling them over to pray. And so they did. They sat down with me and John and Kathy, and they just started praying right in the middle of Wendy's. They, put their hands on me and, were praying over us and everything. And it was very powerful. I tell John it was probably one of the most powerful things that ever happened to me in my life, you know. And that's how my journey started. And from that point on, I truly believed that God was with me through that whole process. And I really felt like I wasn't scared at all through anything. I had 2 ports that had to be put in the first time it got messed up. Well, I wasn't even scared whenever I had to go through the second surgery. I just felt after that, if I wasn't a believer before, I sure was after that day. Yeah. And it was pretty crazy. It was pretty amazing, and but that's how my journey started. And I just feel like through the whole thing that, that God was there. Every time I went into anything or came out of anything, there was a message from my brother or a message from friends of ours saying, we're praying for you. Hope all goes well. Sending me little clips of songs they felt that I would want to hear. So I just think through the whole thing that, I was blessed to have him there. And, I wasn't scared. I felt that whatever's meant to be is meant to be. He came to me that day and he told me, I'm here, and whatever's going to happen, you just got to believe in me. So I did through that whole thing, and here I am, cancer-free today.
Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. What's really amazing to me is because of your personality and how vibrant you always are. And you have kept that through the entire process, from beginning, from finding out to now survival, that the character and your personality never altered or changed through that. And what you and I had talked about that I would like for you to share a little bit is how not only just the gentlemen that were there at Wendy's, but how people just kept approaching you and how you were just being guided through human, but you knew that it was God that was doing it. And then how you stayed so upbeat through it all. Because like I said, your personality and your character never changed.
Well, there was just signs all throughout the whole thing. I don't know, John, if you recall, we were even at a store one day, and some lady just said to me, can I pray? I think it was Bath and Body Works. And some lady just came up. Was that what it was? And she just came up and said, can I pray for you? I'm like, sure. You know what I mean? And I don't know if I call them do-rags. I don't know if, but I don't know if I had my do-rag on that day or whatever. And she just kind of assumed what I was going through, which said, can I pray for you? And I said, sure. And even at one point where I work, they are on the board at the James, and they kind of brought me in and wanted me to cancel all of my appointments and go get a second opinion at the James. And I don't know, I just felt that what I was doing was right. In my heart, I felt what it was right. And cancer surgeon that I had been introduced to from the day I met her was just, to me, that's who I was meant to be with. And she was a blessing through this whole thing. I mean, I told her through the whole thing, I don't think I could have done it without her. And even whenever I was going in for my surgery that day, and I've never had this happen, although I haven't had too many surgeries in my life either, but she sat there the day of my surgery and held my hand, and John was there and his sister was there, and she sat there and prayed for us. So I had confidence going into my surgery after even all of that. And without like Nina and the people I work with, I couldn't have done it either. They were my support group through this whole thing.
Yeah.
I couldn't have done it without them.
And that's what was so amazing to me, is how you came from Pittsburgh and you're here and no contact, but it was like you had relationships with people that you didn't know.
No.
That there was a tide that seemed as if you knew people for years.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
When that actually was not the case. You had just met them through being a cancer patient.
Yeah. Yeah. And the whole thing, through the whole thing, I don't know. I just always had hope. I felt like I didn't get down. I felt like I always had hope. And you're right, Nina. You have people out there that you just realize how good the world is when you go through stuff like this. And, the people where you get your chemo, I've never met people so nice in my entire life. And their sole purpose is to keep you alive. They're wonderful. They're positive. They're friendly. And, you sit there for hours and hours, but, they don't ignore you. They're with you the whole time. They're constantly talking to you and helping you through it. And, very, very good people. And the whole time I just had this sense of hope that everything was going to be okay, because I just felt like, this is where I was supposed to be to get through this. And, they kept telling me at the Cancer Society, well, do you need a support group? And I kept saying, no, God gave me my support group. I am at Worley. They're my support group. I don't need that. I have these people 8 hours a day that are with me and supporting me and, behind me. And, I just felt like, these people that I just met, 2 years ago were my family. And there was one girl that even gave me a card that said, we're your family away from home, And another thing that had happened in the midst of all this is I wasn't really talking to my brother and my sister-in-law, but when I got diagnosed with cancer, I felt somebody at home should know. So just out of the blue, her birthday was February 13th, and I was going for the, the 14th for my appointment to find out if I'd had cancer or not. So I texted her on her birthday, wished her happy birthday. And meanwhile, we really hadn't been talking. And I said, you guys doing anything for Valentine's Day? And she said, not really. What about you? And I said, well, yeah. I said, I'm going for a biopsy or whatever it was that I had to do that day. And I can't remember the whole process. And she said, for what? And I started to tell her. And I said, I just felt somebody at home should know. Do you know, from that day, my sister-in-law and I have spoke via text or phone every day. And prior to that, we really weren't talking a whole lot, but we have spoken every day via text or phone since then. Even since I've, after the process and everything, we still keep in touch every day. So many good things actually came out of a bad thing, for me, I feel. And like I said, through that whole thing, I just felt that entire year I had help, and I just think it was meant to be. And we were here, and we didn't have any family here other than my work family. But it was okay. We got through it, and I say in February, because I was diagnosed February 14th of 2017 and had my port taken out February 13th of 2018. So I consider myself cancer-free as of February
Yes.
of 2018. So it'll be a year in February that I'm now cancer-free.
Wonderful.
So
Wonderful. So I would like for you speak to the other women that may be listening, that maybe they've been diagnosed with breast cancer. What is your advice on thought? What did you keep your mind focused on? You have the support around you, though it's not actually biological family. You have friends and coworkers that are supporting, and the hospital that is supporting. But what was your mindset? How did you keep your mind focused, even though you were going through what you were going through?
well, again, I kind of go back to like, for me, the whole start of my journey was those young boys, and my mind was on that day the entire time, and my mind was just like, God made it clear he's with me, and all I can do is, if I'm meant to be here, I'm going to be here because God told me that day. And if not, then, then that's his will. So I did. I just kind of kept my mind on that. And I just kind of was like, there's nothing I could do. And John was with me through the whole thing. He, went to my chemos with me and stuff like that. So I had his support through all of it. And, I would just say, don't give up hope. Never give up hope. That's what for that entire year, that's all I just had hope and relied on God that he was going to get me either through it or, whatever it was his will was going to happen. And I didn't have any choice in the matter. It was all on him. And, I just stay positive and don't give up hope. There's always hope.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my next question for you is, I'm thinking about how all of this transpired and God's talking to you and he's sending people to help you, and you feel so at peace that you're okay, even though this is not something actually that is inviting or welcoming. We're talking about being ill, the body going against what it's naturally supposed to do. But you're saying, hey, if this is what it is, then, I'm going to do what I need to do to combat this, and that's it. But in the sense that you had all of that going on and you're trusting God, how did that change your relationship or enhance your relationship? Because you said, if I wasn't a believer, I'm a believer now, because God was talking to you and he was showing you through people, everything is going to be okay.
Well, I definitely think it changed it a lot for me, and since those boys told me what church they were from, and I had often tried to find it to go back and tell them that they really did change me, even, not even going through that, but just me as a person, and I just think that now I look for the signs, you know what I mean? Before I didn't, but now I look for the signs and, kind of know that like, well, that's a sign of God, you know what I mean? And he made it clear that day that this is a sign, pay attention to it and pay attention to them going forward. And I mean, I really do. I think it definitely changed me as a person and the way I believe in God and, and just now I look for the signs, I didn't before.
John, did you have anything that you wanted to add or?
I'm glad she's here.
Yes. Wonderful. So you made it through.
Man of few words.
But that's
straight to the point, I guess.
very huge, though, because not only the recipient of the bad news, you being the one, though in your case, of course, you're a cancer survivor, it brought relationship, and sometimes loved ones, though he was not the one to receive the report, but because he's married to you, it affected him in a way, though you were the one that was going through and going the one to have the surgery, take the chemo, you're going through all the tests. But emotionally, those that are close to you that love you, they go through something too.
I can tell you that it was probably harder on John than it was me. Because I feel, again, I keep saying this, but I was just convinced that God was there and God was behind me. And it is what it is. I'm not so sure he was as much as I was. So for me, I wasn't scared. I wasn't. And I could tell you that as honestly as I'm sitting here, it didn't scare me. When I lost my hair, it wasn't that big of a deal. It really wasn't, John. It wasn't that big of a deal
No,
for
it
me.
wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't that big of a deal for me. I remember when my mother was sick and my mom lost her hair. That was very, very traumatic for her. I guess because I saw it with my mother and I saw it with my sister, it was just not a big deal. Again, was led in the right direction as, where to go and the best places to go. And I had a great wig, so, that no one even knew that, I didn't have hair.
People didn't know.
Yeah, no,
Right.
no one would have even known. I can remember coming to work one morning with my do-rag, left on lunch to get my wig, came back, and everybody's like, holy cow. They're like, you would never even know.
Yeah.
I came back with my wig, and, so none of that really bothered me. But I think he was more under stress, because I was convinced either way, it is what it is. God told me that day, but I don't think he was as convinced as I was, but to me, I was just like, it is what it is, and what's going to happen is going to happen. And so I was, don't you think, John? I was calm. I wasn't scared. I wasn't, nothing really seemed to, I just had hope. And, being as I did have my work family, and then, my sister-in-law, Missy, and I were back in touch again, that was such a comfort. They were just, my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, and her two kids, Grace and Anthony, they were just a huge part of all of this and there for me every step of the way. And actually, they came, my last chemo, they came and surprised me, which was such a shock. I mean, they drove 3 hours just to be at my last chemo with me. And I was sitting there, and I was kind of nodding off, and John says to me, Jan, that looks like Missy. And I said, that is Missy. I was like, what the heck? So they drove 3 hours to be there with me. So for me, I just always had this sense of calm. I was never really scared. And I had some hiccups through the whole thing, with having like the 2 ports and everything. And, I had some hiccups, and the radiation was worse than chemo for me. But, I just, like I said, I gave it all to God, and he put me here today cancer-free.
Yes.
So, like I said, I don't think he had that behind him as much as I did. So it was a little more stressful for him than it definitely was for me.
Yeah. I want to touch base a little bit on your mother and your sister, because they were cancer patients as well, correct? And I think you and I had touched base on it before when you first started working. And I really do believe from your testimony that the Lord made sure that you were at a comfortable place and at peace, even though the information that you were receiving was not good information. But because of your mother and your sister and what you saw them go through, what do you think, if you had not heard the voice of the Lord and the comfort of the young men that were at Wendy's, do you believe that you would have been at a different place?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I tell John that. I said, I truly believe, had that not happened that day, I'd have been scared. I'd have been miserable. I'd have been like, I just think everything to me would have been, times 10 and worse, because seeing my mom and my sister, they had ovarian cancer, but still seeing them go through it and neither one of them surviving,
Right.
I think it would have been a whole different story. I think I would have just been, this is useless. They fought this, and although it was a different kind of cancer at a different stage, I still think that would have been in the back of my mind. It's still cancer, and look how that panned out for them.
Right.
But I truly, truly believe that, it was, those boys were sent by God that day to tell me it's going to be okay. And I'll never forget it. It's an experience, something in my life that I will never, ever forget. Probably one of the most powerful things that ever happened in my life to me, and seriously changed that entire year for me.
Mm-hmm.
I really think that I definitely would have been in a different place had that not happened.
Mm-hmm. And what others don't know, though, the topic was talking about you being a survivor of cancer, all the other things that had transpired with your apartment and, having to move. And I mean,
it was a
you
rough
year.
had,
Yeah,
you
his
know,
cat passed away the same year.
you had a
Yeah.
lot
Yeah, it was a
of
rough
things
year.
happening, in all the process of that.
Mhm.
But stay so sweet
I tried.
and
Yeah, it was
and
definitely a rough year,
enjoyable.
but I just think that it was meant to be. It was meant to be, and it just made us stronger people.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely stronger people haven't gone through it. Everything that you go through makes you stronger.
Yeah, that's true. And you have shown that. So I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Nina.
So
Thanks
glad that you did it,
Yep,
Janice.
and here I
you
am.
survived
Cancer
Look,
free.
You survived cancer and you did the podcast.
which I was very nervous, just so you know.
So, yeah, I was trying to get you to believe that God was giving you a word about the podcast so that you would come on.
Well, hey, I think that whole bike thing and everything all tied in. He was
Yes.
getting me here regardless.
He worked it on
Yeah.
out, didn't he?
Yep, he was getting me here regardless.
And he did that thing.
Yes, he did.
So, thanks again, you all, for listening, and we appreciate you. And just remember that you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. You just heard the testimony of Janice Hertzog, who is a breast cancer survivor. She heard the voice of God, and he sent people to her, those that she did not know, but they were family while she was here in Ohio, away from her original home in Pittsburgh. So all of you women out there that may be listening, and maybe you have received the bad report, look for the voice of God. Listen to the sound of his voice. Look for the angels and the things that he will do that will bring strength and peace to you as you are on your journey. Again, you may listen to us on youtube.com, the Hughes Roundtable, and press videos, though it will only be audio, but it will load up all of the episodes that we have done thus far. Thank you so much again for listening. We appreciate you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Everybody, we must be one. Everybody.